Well, it's tipped to be the centrepiece of next Tuesday's budget, the Prime Minister's multi-billion-dollar manufacturing strategy to create more and more Aussie jobs. The PM will deliver a major pre-budget address to the National Press Club on Thursday, where he'll outline a strategy to boost Australia's ability to manufacture industrial goods locally. Joining me now for his analysis on this and more today, the Australian's political editor, Dennis Shanahan from Canberra. Dennis, I want to ask you, it's a two-part question. How do you think the PM's going to use this speech on Thursday, not just to talk about manufacturing, of course, but to frame the budget? And have you got any early mail on what we might expect Tuesday week?
Oh, well, look, Peter, I think that he will use the speech to start to emphasise recovery. He's going to go into two phases where he's going to look at restoration of the economy. Obviously, we're in deep trouble and we have to get back some of that economic performance, some of that economic growth and the creation of jobs. But the budget is going to have to look further than that. And indeed, the whole pitch on manufacturing is looking much beyond the budget, much beyond next year and into a 5-year plan. Sounds a bit Soviet-induced, but a 5-year plan is going to be necessary because what we're actually seeing here, and it is quite extraordinary politically, we have a Liberal government which has said that deficit and debt, which will be at record heights, no matter if they're a bit less than what people thought they might be because of a slightly improved economic performance next week, and that debt and that deficit will not be reduced until unemployment is considered to be comfortably under 6%. And the heart of that plan is regional manufacturing, resources industries, building Australian-made. This sounds like a Labor agenda, and yet on the other side, we have Labor concentrating on spending more money and concentrating on renewable jobs, while Scott Morrison's out there appealing to the regions, the blue-collar workers, manufacturers, miners, agricultural workers, pitching a 5-year plan. I think that the budget, his speech this week and the budget are really the foundations for what he would hope would be 5-year plan for recovery and restoration of the economy pre-COVID.
Well, the PM is, I have to say, a pretty brilliant political strategist, if nothing else, and you know that, I know that, particularly given his history inside the party machine, but he's realised he can have a pincer movement here on Labor. He can see that they're brawling over energy policy. And not only is, coal kryptonite, but now gas too. He's going down a path about manufacturing and Aussie jobs that he knows, while they're at war with each other over coal and gas and no other real baseload solution because they won't touch nuclear, they can't follow him. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Labor is absolutely caught as long as it continues on this concentration on climate change, on targets and renewables. Yes, there is a place for all of those. But Scott Morrison, look at the way he is developing the defence industry in South Australia. South Australia was a desert for the coalition because of the end of the car manufacturing industry. But what Scott Morrison is saying now, we're going to build new industries, Australian-made defence, using Australian steel in South Australia. In Queensland, he's backing gas, coal mining. He's doing all that Labor can't do while it sticks to this one-sided approach to a plan for jobs. And I think the one thing that Scott Morrison could really do, if he really wanted to try a new snowy hydro and get out there and really push for something dramatic, futuristic and necessary for Australia, start a nuclear industry.
Well, let's see what happens there. I want to go to two quick things before we go. It's interesting, a number of people drew this to my attention. The announcements yesterday on the partial easing of restrictions, a lot of window dressing, I have to say, to those outside of Victoria. Victorians know it as window dressing, but it looked like something by lifting the curfew, but no material change for residents in Melbourne. What it did allow was the number of workers to come back, about 130,000 to various industries, provided there's a COVID-safe plan. But when you look at the detail, We're talking about warehousing, postal distribution, supermarkets, abattoirs, a lot of construction, big construction industry jobs too. These are all union jobs, Dennis. These are not private sector. Private sector are all still at home, and we know many of them are going to the wall. This is also Victoria, the home of the strong-arm CFMU and others. It's interesting today, a trade union leader, Ingrid Stitt, will take the position of Jenny Makakos almost immediately. He needs the numbers to pass legislation, so it will be almost immediately. He's using the staging of restrictions, I think, to further strengthen the public sector, the power and the union power in Victoria, isn't he?
Well, it certainly looks that way, particularly considering that we now know from the inquiry today into the hotel quarantine that it was the Victorian Police and the police union's preference that private security guards be used at the hotels. And this somehow became fact, unbelievably. But what we do see in whatever Daniel Andrews is doing is it is helping and favouring union-dominated industries. Of course, the construction industry in other states has continued happily, although at a reduced level, all the way through, which also brings into question the extent of the lockdown in Victoria. And of course, by turning to those areas where there is strong union representation, opening them up first, the Premier does seem to be sending a signal that small business, the backbone of the economy, doesn't get as much assistance as the big unionised industries.